In this report, we'll learn about the rise of the converged infrastructure and how this increasingly popular IT solution is simplifying data center setup and management, as well as dramatically reducing computing cost. A converged infrastructure, also known as unified computing or integrated systems, can transform organizations from their traditional siloed legacy infrastructures into modern, high-performance computing centers designed to meet enterprise computing demands now and well into the future. The lure of a low-cost, exceedingly scalable converged system versus the highly complex brick-and-mortar data centers of current times is quickly winning the support of even the most skeptical CIOs. But let's bear in mind that despite an increasing number of CI fans, there are still quite a few naysayers out there. The great fear seems to be that in the end, these converged systems won't have what it takes to support certain critical enterprise applications. So to help clear the air, we'll have a look under the hood of CI, discuss its benefits, implementation challenges, and learn the circumstances when organizations should consider embracing these solutions. This program features interview guest and converged infrastructure expert Samad Ali, Director of Business Development at Logicalis US. Logicalis is an international IT solutions and managed services provider with expertise in enterprise communications, collaboration, data center, and cloud services. There are several teaching points in the program. First, we'll explain the concept of a converged infrastructure and learn how it differs from traditional computing models of the past. Then, we'll learn under what circumstance an organization should consider implementing CI and discuss the correct way to go about it. Next, a look at the CI vendor landscape with advice on how to select solution and service providers. We'll then wrap up our report with some added thoughts from our expert on the benefits of a converged infrastructure. In our first segment, we'll introduce the concept of a converged infrastructure and how it differs from traditional computing models. CIOs and IT professionals have been steadily warming to the converged infrastructure concept. In fact, a recent study by market intelligence and advisory services provider IDC revealed that CI markets are posting close to a 55% annual growth rate. The research further states that by 2016, the market for converged systems will reach a staggering $17.8 billion. So what advantages do IT pros expect to realize through a converged infrastructure? Well, again, according to the IDC study, there are threefold. First, the ability to get products and services to the marketplace more rapidly. Second, lower cost and greater IT efficiencies. And third, enabling larger and faster operational and infrastructure improvements. To learn more about this rising computing trend, its benefits, and associated challenges, let's turn to our expert from Logicalis US, Samad Ali. Samad, welcome to the program.
Mike, thank you so much for having me here.
Now, Samad, to get our discussion started and to clarify any confusion that may be out there, how would you describe the concept of a converged infrastructure?
Mike, great question. So yeah, there is a lot of confusion out there. Think of converged infrastructure as integrated infrastructure that's bringing together a number of different components, software, such as management software, servers, storage, networking, various hypervisors. It is pre-engineered and it is pre-tested for either your specific workloads or for general purpose workloads.
Well, then how does CI differ from the way computing systems were designed in the past?
So in the past, people bought infrastructure in components. They bought different hypervisors, they bought different servers, storage, networking, and given kind of the workload that they were working on, they would put it together inside their data center. They would uncart all these different components, put them together, wire them together, provision them, apply the appropriate level of patching, and it took significant amount of their time on what I would call as non-value-added tasks. Today you can get that entire infrastructure in a few boxes, not hundreds of boxes. Once those infrastructures were stood up and applications were stood up, they would need to manage those custom-built environments. When you have custom-built environments, inevitably a security patch comes out from the application side or from the server side, or there's a firmware upgrade that the manufacturer is providing. Well, when these patches get applied, they increase significant complexity in the sense that not only do you need to know what revisions of patches to apply, which ones are compatible with what product, but you need to be able to apply them in a certain sequence. If you do not do it correctly, you need to be able to back those patches out. You can end up having an unstable and sometimes unusable systems. So that's how people did it in the past.
So from your point of view, how big an issue is CI for global business today? Is it a nice to have or a got to have?
Global businesses today are challenged with large problem sets. We have 3 industry trends around big data, cloud computing, mobility, bring your own device. And all of these are changing IT very, very quickly. Businesses are trying to leverage this intelligence to take advantage of the market opportunities that emerge, whether they are changing policies of a various countries' economy or based on global environmental changes, changes in agricultural production, and stresses of those nature, or new entrants from emerging economies into the marketplace that a global competitor may find themselves in. In any one of these cases, they need to be able to have IT support them very quickly. Converged infrastructure is the foundation for an agile IT environment. So if global companies are dealing with those challenges, they absolutely need agility in their IT environment, and converged infrastructure is a great strategy to get there.
Samad, give us a real-world example, perhaps from one of your clients. Tell us what led them to make the move from their legacy systems to a converged infrastructure, and how did CI change their business for the better?
That's a great question. So we have a number of customers. Our sweet spot as Logicalis is in the mid-market. So I'll use a mid-market example, but similar examples could be applied for Fortune 500 and large enterprises. We had an accounting firm, KSM, that have roughly, it's a national accounting firm, thousands of clients. They were having a challenge in terms of getting their customer data brought up. Whenever a query was coming in, it was taking hours to bring the customer data up. We reduced the time that it took them to bring that record up by 95% by deploying converged infrastructure. We reduced the time it took them to provision the servers. We reduced the time, their requirements for how much data storage they needed by introducing deduplication in their environment. So at the end of the day, the benefit that they got, or the biggest challenge that they had, is they needed a simplified environment because they only had 2 IT professionals full-time supporting their multi-office, multi-city, multi-application environment.
Now, let's discuss the circumstances under which an organization should consider a converged infrastructure and the correct way to go about implementing it. As our expert has explained, a converged infrastructure brings together computing resources such as storage, servers, applications, networks, and management. And those resources can be pre-configured and literally plugged into your data center. The converged system can be up and running in record time, saving enormous amounts of labor and financial resources. Once CI is implemented, however, it's time for IT to roll up their sleeves and work through a period of transition as legacy applications and workloads are migrated to the new converged system. A big area of change for IT with the new CI system will be in the area of infrastructure management, where long-established operational processes will need to be modified. In addition, with less infrastructure to manage, IT department staffing may be impacted and new skill sets needed by those who remain. The converged system will also necessitate changes to the financial management process related to infrastructure. For example, budget categories will likely be revised and streamlined, and long-planned investments may no longer be needed due to the many economies enabled by the converged system. Now, as we're all aware, with any technology change, there are always unexpected complications and risks. So let's return to our expert and discuss how to maximize the benefits and minimize those risks when implementing a converged infrastructure. Now, Samad, I'm curious to know, under what circumstances should organizations consider implementing CI?
So my great question. As we've been discussing, the challenges come from 2 different places. On the business side, how quickly is the marketplace changing? How quickly do they want IT to respond to various needs based on the opportunities that they're trying to address? From an IT perspective, it's the complexity. It's the ability of engineers to be able to take weekends off and spend some time with their family doing the things they like to do beyond just coding or managing various infrastructures. So if you have those challenges, really focused in on not having an agile IT environment, not being able to get applications updated out there very, very quickly, not being able to provision or deploy new applications in minutes, but it's taking you days and months to do so, you should absolutely look at converged infrastructure.
So then, when a firm decides to move to a converged infrastructure, how should they approach it?
So thus far, we've been talking a lot about the technology of converged infrastructure. What I'd really like to introduce at this point in time is the concept of convergence. And that includes people and process challenges that an organization needs to be thinking about as they're thinking about converged infrastructure. Today, as we talked about, as people are building out their infrastructure based on compute, based on storage, based on networking and management software, there are different people inside that organization that are managing those environments and have responsibility and accountability for those components. In the concept of convergence now, different people or the same people need to have accountability for all of those components. When they apply patching or they manage the ecosystem, they need to be thinking about cross-training themselves. They need to be educating themselves. They have chosen a career path today that focuses on deep diving or learning more about one particular component and its ecosystem. They need to start thinking about a different process. When patching gets applied today, the policies would be determined typically based on each component and how patching would be applied. An organization needs to think about how do you apply patching across the board on all the components in one go. Instead of having unique management consoles for each one of the components, how do you manage the entire ecosystem through a single pane of glass? So I think these are some of the consideration an organization needs to have as they're starting to think about converged infrastructure and thinking about the journey to it.
Samad, in your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges organizations face when implementing CI?
So just as I said in my last response, the challenges are probably more people process than the technology. Different vendors in the marketplace have great solutions that companies can adopt. But along with those solutions, companies need to be thinking about their people process issues.
Now, there are always going to be bumps in the road when new technology is brought online. Tell us about some of the gotchas, the typical missteps organizations take along the way with CI.
I would say it's implementing technology for the sake of technology and not thinking about, once again, the business process issues. The technology part of this deployment from an adoption standpoint is easy. It's pre-integrated, it's configured. In some cases, it's designed for certain workloads. Oracle has a few products out there where it integrates the applications. HP, Cisco, and others have products out there that are designed for certain workloads, whether they're VDI or SAP HANA or Exchange or Microsoft SQL. Well, you can go deploy them, but you really need to think about how you're going to support them, how you're going to manage them, what's the management software that's going to be used. And to really take advantage of converged infrastructure, you need to be thinking about automation and orchestration software, the layer that's critically important that makes CI do what you need to do in order to be able to gain the efficiencies and the ROI from the project that you expect.
And Samad, it's rumored that CI may not be as useful in established data centers that have invested heavily in technologies that are not part of the vendor's bundled package. Is that the case?
That's not really. Any company that's struggling with agility in their IT environment can take advantage of converged infrastructure today. It is not a rip and replace strategy, so you do not need to take out what you have. I would suggest customers start with greenfield opportunities, a new application that may be rolling out, or modernization of an existing application that may be under consideration to think about deploying converged infrastructure. I would suggest that they use that project to relook at their people issues and their process issues and redefine as a test case as to how they would manage this convergence that we're all marching to reduce complexity in the data center. When I talk to my customers, they tell me that 70% of their time and energy is spent today on just maintaining existing systems. They cannot spend the time to innovate to support the business needs of their customers as it exists today. So from that perspective, if you have that challenge, you need to get on the path to convergence. And use the test cases such as a new application to be able to test, prove out. Furthermore, I would say think about which vendors have open standards, because ultimately you're going to have to integrate with your existing infrastructure. Even though it's a new application, it may rely on different data and interfaces, and it will need to be brought into the network. So think about who provides the most open interfaces within their technology that allows you to integrate back into your legacy infrastructure.
On a positive note, I've also heard that a converged infrastructure is well suited to cloud deployments. Can you tell us about CI and cloud?
The journey to cloud starts from component-based architecture, where we started or what is in place today. A number of customers over the last few years have been virtualizing their environment, whether it's compute, it's storage, or networking. As they have virtualized that environment, the next step is, can I manage that environment across a single pane of glass? Or do I need to learn hundreds of different management pieces or software that's out there in the marketplace in order to be able to manage the patching, for example, or to look into my various virtual machines and to be able to see if they are alive or they're dead or they're malfunctioning. It is the ability to be able to look at how do I get that resource back so that I can re-provision new resources. So automation and orchestration is the next step, and convergence allows you to bring that into place. Beyond that, your next step is you can, once you have designed your applications, you've designed your infrastructure for convergence, you can then start migrating some of those workloads either to the public cloud or to a private cloud. Most of my customers are looking at a hybrid in order to be able to take into account seasonal workloads.
Samad, I'm sure our viewers would be interested in knowing who to include in the planning for a CI implementation. In other words, what organizational roles or departments do you need to call together?
Oh, it's absolutely not an IT thing by itself. I mean, you can certainly start with IT and start talking through it, but you need to be very inclusive of the business. You need to be able to articulate the benefits to the business, help them understand what Cloud Agile IT can do for them in terms of their needs and their desires. I would say you start ideally with the business in the room, but if for some reason you cannot, you need to have an interdepartmental task force that gets put together that not only looks at the technology, but looks at the people and process issues as well.
So do firms typically reach to the outside for help with vendor selection and implementation? Or can most swing this with their regular staff?
So Mike, as we discussed, most of my customers are struggling with just maintaining their existing IT infrastructure. So given that state, I would suggest get help. Get help also because if you assign it to the storage team or the networking team, you're going to get inherent biases. You have people process issues to deal with, where people's career paths are already established in a certain direction. Somebody needs to be able to look at that independently. Your patching and management processes have been well documented. You operate on them day in, day out. Your runbooks are in place. So I would suggest, in order to be able to deal with that level of complexity, get the help that you need. Your staff's already stretched thin. If you can't swing it, get help.
So Samad, to wrap up this segment, can you offer some overall best practices for a successful CI implementation?
Be inclusive, be realistic, choose your application wisely that you're going to use for testing your converged infrastructure environment. As you're testing that environment, be sure to include people process issues and use that as a test bed to validate that the new processes will indeed function. I would say get started today if you need agile IT environment.
We'll now wrap up our report with a look at the CI vendor landscape and closing thoughts from our guest expert, Samad Ali. In this report, we introduce viewers to the concept of the converged infrastructure. We then discuss under what circumstances an organization should consider implementing CI and the correct way to go about it. We identified some of the leading challenges with CI implementations and offered best practices for success. Next, we talked about CI solution providers and how to make good choices when selecting a vendor partner. We'll now close out our report with some added thoughts and advice from our expert on today's topic. Samad, give us an overview of the vendor landscape for CI solutions. Who are the big players and what products and services do they offer?
So from a technology standpoint, there are a number of players in the marketplace, and they're all the large technology companies that you would expect. So IBM has Pure Systems. VMware, Cisco, and NetApp got together and produced FlexPod. Cisco, VMware, and EMC this time have a product out there called vBlock, or a set of products. HP has Converged Systems. Oracle has their engineered systems. But there are differences between each one of those offerings.
Well, then how can organizations make good choices when selecting technology and service providers? What would you recommend?
So as you're thinking about selecting these vendors, what you really need to think about is who owns the IP, who has the greatest ability to innovate and engineer on the back end because they have the IP across all the product offerings. You need to think about the management software. Can you manage individual components just as easily as you can manage the end-to-end environment? Who includes automation and orchestration as part of their software offerings? Who has the most open interfaces in order to be able to integrate to your legacy system or your existing environments? So those would be some of the things from a technology standpoint I would be thinking about.
Let's talk about your firm, Logicalis, for a moment. What is their approach to CI?
So we have very strong relationships with IBM, Cisco, as well as HP. We have relationships in place with VMware and EMC as well. So we support all infrastructures. We can provide you what your environment makes sense. We can consult with you upfront to help you make a decision as to what is the right strategy for you. We can implement the infrastructure for you, as well as we can maintain it over time.
Organizations are anxious to get a good return on investment when implementing any new technology solution. Typically, what kind of ROI can be expected with CI?
So the ROI on this, the answer is it varies, but things that you need to consider is, through automation and orchestration, what you will be able to do is, we talked earlier about products at component level showing up in various cardboard boxes. You got to unbox, you got to cable, you got to provision. You don't have to do all of that stuff, so you're saving yourself time. From a patching standpoint, the uptime that you're going to get from your applications, because you're going to patch in an orderly, thoughtful manner, and all of that, the tools are out there from various vendors that will automate that for you. So given that, the time savings that you get would be the hard benefits that you will get out of any converged infrastructure undertaking. The soft benefits are numerous. Ability to react to the market conditions. You could probably monetize that depending on what opportunity you're responding to from a business standpoint. You need to think about what's the benefit of being able to go home on the weekends and not have to worry about your environments coming down, or spending time patching on the weekends by creating windows of opportunity to do so while the workloads are low. You need to be thinking about, from a career path standpoint, having the ability to learn about the new technology that's in the marketplace. We talked about big data, we talked about mobility, bring your own device. To what extent do your teams have time to be able to read up, learn those things, and to be able to spend time? What value would you assign to that? So those would be some of the soft benefits. And we have a number of models, ROI models, that we could bring to the table, but those would be some of the considerations if you want to build your own.
And Samad, what should IT be telling their business colleagues about converged infrastructure? What do they need to make them know and understand?
What business really needs to know and understand is, if they invest in CI, they'll get a much better service level from IT. They'll be able to get their applications out the door much more quickly, be able to respond to changing market conditions very, very quickly.
So to wrap up our report today, what final takeaway advice can you offer organizations looking to adopt CI?
So the journey to CI is not just about the technology. As we've talked about it previously, it's about thinking through, what are your management processes? What are your people doing? What are their roles and responsibilities? How would you modify them? Think of the entire data center convergence story and think about how you're going to go, not just do it on a technology basis, but be thinking about the change management issues that are in place. And the last thing I would say is, don't wait. This is not going to get easier. The technology is there today. It makes your life a lot easier. Get started today. Bring it in-house as a pilot project on a new application, and you will be happy that you did.
Samad Ali from Logicalis US, thank you so much for bringing us up to date on this important IT topic.
Mike, thank you so much for giving me a chance to share some of my thoughts with you.
And that concludes our report, Converged Infrastructure, Benefits and Challenges. I'm Michael Quinlan, and thanks for watching.